I think you're exactly right. Thinking about the role that the letter is playing, and therefore the language, a letter sent from Vilna to Brody is in Hebrew because it's to the rabbis. The letter within Brody, which is an announcement, is in Yiddish because it's about bringing this newfound danger to the people, making sure that they know. And it goes on that they don't say Shema, and they don't say prayers at the right time. There's a different nusach. They use the nusach of the Arizal, which obviously is more mystical. Now, you could see why that's going to perk up one's ears. It's pretty clear. There's also a letter from there's a series of letters from Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi that talks about how he tried to go to the Vilna Gaon and to talk to him, and the Vilna Gaon wouldn't. He tried to get a meeting with the Vilna Gaon wouldn't accept it, and but Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi over and over again reinforces that the Vilna Gaon is a tzaddik and is the greatest Talmid Chacham ever, and keeps saying to his Hasidic people, we need to just be humble, quiet, go on our way. We can't fight this war. That's not the way to do this. And eventually, 50 years later, of course, it becomes obvious that the Chasidim are not, followers of Shabtai Tzvi. But you can see from Rabbi Shner Zalman's letter that one of the things he says is, the Vilna Gaon said what he said about the Chasidim because he didn't really know. He was ill-informed. He didn't know any Chasidim. He was told about it. But he also does mention there that part of it is a fear of Sabbatianism, of Shabtai Tzvi, sort of rearing its head still. And it's true that even though it's 100 years later, Shabtai Tzvi, and I think he may even mention the Emden Eibeshitz controversy. I think Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, right, may mention from 100 years before the Emden Eibeshitz controversy, which Rabbi Yaakov Emden and Rabbi Yosef Eibeshitz are both Talmidei Chachamim. They're both accepted leaders of the rabbinic leaders of the Jewish people, but one did accuse the other of being a follower of Shabtai Tzvi. I think we can be fairly sure that that's part of the issue. And so, what's the big deal if they're changing their nusach? So I think it's slightly different than what the Chassam Sofer is worried about with the reform. That change is a problem. It's going to lead to a slippery slope. Here, it's not just change, it's Kabbalist. It's change in favor of Kabbalah. The Arizal's prayer book draws on the Kabbalah a lot. And not a lot, it draws on the Kabbalah somewhat. The obvious example is, let's say, Bameh Madlikin on Friday nights, when Nusach Ashkenaz says a section from the Mishnah before Ma'ariv in Nusach Sfard, which is really the same thing, was what the Chasidim used, and in Nusach Hari, you have a section from the Zohar about Shabbat. So remember, part of what fueled the Sabbatian movement was Kabbalah. It was a sense that Messianism, Kabbalah, that's what was moving Shabtai Tzvi, and the Frankists, who turned the Torah on its head and say you have to violate everything in the Torah, they believe it also for Kabbalistic reasons. Not it's obviously a misinterpretation, but it comes from their sense of messianism. This is the Messianic era, that kind of thing. So you could see why even the changing of the tefillah, the prayer service, the nusach, and it's true they're using a prayer book from before. It's not like they invented this prayer book. The Ari Zal lives 200 years before this, more. So it's true they're just using old prayer books. But I don't think it's just the change. I don't think it's like the response to reform movement. I don't think it's just the change in custom. I think it's also that it's Kabbalistic, and that's very scary because of Shabtai Tzvi. In Dafrushin is Chazir, they're changing the Nusach, Varsh Unzer Gaonim, and right to the other Unzer, the other people's Gaonim leaders, meaning the Chasidim. Oh, sorry, Unzer Gaonim, our leaders, Kadmonim Ha'avin on uns miyased gewesen asher ein derech lintas min small. Our rabbis, our gaonim, fixed our prayer service, and we should not diverge from it, right or left. Gefinen sich zelche rishayim poshe Yisrael begufan ein erech l'rishasim. These sinners, they're sinners, these people, and there is no end to their sinning. Zenin park ol mehinin chayolam. They throw off the yoke. The Yiddish here is so Hebraic that's pretty easy. They throw off the yoke of God, and they do. They throw away their life of the world to come. Rak beneginatam kol hayom, and all they do is they sing all day. Unmachen sich chaburos kitas kisas. They make little groups. Zen mavaza kol Torah peh, and they disparage the Torah, the oral tradition. Now that's very interesting, right? In other words, there's more than one movement in Judaism that has disparaged the oral tradition, that has said, all we have is the written tradition. But before Shabtai Tzvi, what do you have? The Karaites, and they do. That's what they do. They accept the written Torah, but not the oral Torah. Unzagen zilarnin rak Kabbalah, and all that they learn is Kabbalah. They daven from the siddur of the Arizal. Now, it's not like they have any problem with the Arizal. They're calling him, the holy man of God, the Arizal, which he is. Now, this is very interesting. They are definitely cutting off the shoots. Where's that from? So that is the language that the Gemara uses for Acher, for Elisha ben Avuya, who becomes a heretic. He cut off the plants cut off the branches of Judaism. So that's the language that they're using here. And I don't have a problem with that Arizal, but it's the way that the Chasidim are using Kabbalah, the way that it's leading them away from Torah. I mean, none of this seems bad to us because we live in a post-Hasidic. We live in an age where we understand that the Chasidim did very good things, and the Chasidim are accepted, and the Chasidim are part of Orthodoxy, and the Chasidim, if anything, they're quite religious. We're looking we have to put ourselves in their shoes. The very beginning of Chassidut, all you're seeing is they're doing weird stuff. They're standing on their head during davening. They're mostly they're singing a lot. They're studying Kabbalah instead of Gemara. They're davening a different nusach. And it's 100 years after Shabtai Tzvi, but it's only 20 or 30 years after the two great, arguably the two greatest rabbis in the world. One accused the other of being a Sabbatian. So it's not crazy. Now, one of I think what this is that they shecht their animals with polished knives. One of the big issues between the Chasidim and the Misnagdim was the kind of shchita that they did. And one of the things the Vilna Gaon said is not only can you not talk to them or look at them, the Chasidim, but you can't eat their shchita either. And it had to do something with polished knives. I guess a polished knife will retain its strength a little better. But there was some argument about whether that was kosher shchita or not. So that's what they're contending here, is that they use these knives that some people might hold are not kosher shchita. Varshman gefint nit b'chol Talmud post Mishar Achronim. We don't find anywhere in Jewish law that you could polish your shchita knife. Varsh kol shochtem zagenash is built the efshar dimin to shochten man muz kumin the choda hagamra ve'ikar. And it sounds like there's more of a danger. They're saying that the knife could come to become nicked. I think that's what it's saying, and it will cause ikor, tearing of the windpipe, and that would make the shchita not kosher. Now it actually is a kosher shchita. It's just this fear. Again, it's about change. In other words, any change here is scary. But of course, it depends how you view that change. If you view that change as the slippery slope to Sabbatianism, so it's very scary. If you view that change as, the people, the storekeepers of Vilna are disconnected from davening, let's sing with them, and and Kabbalah is important, and there's something ecstatic to be gained. That's a different point of view, right? Obviously, they're seeing the world in different ways. So that's the nature of this letter. It's a little hard the Yiddish, but you really, because the Yiddish is so interspersed with Hebrew, you can basically get a sense of it. And it's, it's the gist of it, of course, is the letter that we finished, the letter that was sent from Vilna to Brody. Now, how do they know this? I mean, how do the people in Brody know all this? If the Chasidim, if the we're talking about very small groups of Chasidim, and is there one in Brody? So I think there may have been, but or is this letter, this announcement in Brody, are they just kind of spreading the word, based on great worry and fear, just totally based on the letter that was sent from Vilna. And in Vilna there was a small group, the Karliner Minyan, led by these two people, Ozer and somebody else, who they were going to beat publicly. So is this just fear that's gripping everybody and they got to spread the word, or and they're just talking about what they saw in the letter now, and why does this catch on so much? So scholars of this period say that without the Vilna Gaon having backed this up and really carried the torch for this, it never would have happened. That it's really the approbation of the Vilna Gaon, not just the approbation, but him at the front. I mean, he is, according to everybody in the generation, the greatest mind and the greatest rabbi of the generation, even according to the Chasidim. I mean, when you read the letters of Chasidim, like Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, was the leader of the Chasidim in the late, once you get into the late 1770s, 1780s. I mean, the Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mizrich, is still alive, but the one who's really writing is Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi. He also sees the Vilna Gaon as the greatest person in the generation. There's no doubt about it. He's seen as a reflection of the rabbis of the Mishnah. I mean, and he was maybe, but that gives everything power. That's why this, I think, goes like wildfire, and why it has so much legitimacy. So, I'll see if I can make, if there's other things in this second letter that's important, but if not, maybe with the third letter, which I think is in Hebrew.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.